Welcome. My name is Victor Bradley. I'm so glad you're here with us. We are the Bright Family Engagement Team, and we work with families all across the New England area to facilitate peer-to-peer support groups, provide resources, and help school clinic engage families in their work. Bright stands for Bridge for Resilient Youth in Transition, an organization out of Brookline Center for Mental Health in Brookline, Massachusetts. Bright helps schools build, maintain high quality Tier 3 general education support programs for students struggling with mental health and medical issues. There are over 150 Bright programs in elementary, middle, and high schools in Massachusetts and several other programs launching in New York, New Hampshire, Oregon, Chicago, and more, and across the country. I'd like to introduce our wonderful panelist tonight, and her name is Diana Graber. She is an author of Raising Humans in the Digital World and Helping Kids Build a Healthy Relationship with Technology. She's also founder of the cyberwise.org and the cybercivics.com, two organizations dedicated to helping adults and students learn digital citizenship and literacy skills. A longtime media producer with an MA in media psychology and social change, Diana is reorganized expert in technology, impact, and human behavior. In addition to serve as an adjunct professor of media psychology at the Massachusetts School of Professional Psychology, MSPP. Diana is still a teacher in middle school of cyber civics at Journey School in Southern California. She received the 2017 Media Literacy Teacher Award from National Association for Media, Literacy, and Education. We are so pleased to have her with us tonight.
Thank you so much for such the kind introduction, and I'm really happy to be here too to talk to you about digital parenting. So without further ado, I will dive right in. You've already heard about me. I'm the author of this book on the right. CyberWise is our website for parents. If you're interested in anything about the digital world, it's full of information. And then CyberCivics is our middle school digital literacy program that you'll hear a little bit about tonight. All right, so we know childhood has changed dramatically. So here's childhood really not that long ago in terms of how long humans have been on this planet, right? That's what childhood used to look like. It looks really different today. This is what childhood looks like circa 2022. So what does this mean? It means our kids are really socializing in a completely different and unique manner. So I'm going to go through the differences. Number one, asynchronous. For the first time ever, our kids are engaged in these conversations that might start yesterday, continue today, and go on for 2 more weeks. That's super different. Permanent and public. Everything they put online stays online forever. Like this picture that this little girl thinks is so cute today might completely embarrass her in 3 years. 24/7 availability. That's what's causing our kids a lot of stress and anxiety, is they feel like they have to be available to their peers that often. Absence of social cues. A lot of things that they do online have no face associated with it. So it's hard for kids to interpret meaning. Quantifiable. Everything they do, it's all numbers. How many likes did I get? How many followers do I have? How many people looked at my post? Visual, super visual culture now. They have to have this whole new literacy skill of reading visual media. And finally, this is really, I think, one of the most concerning things is algorithmic. Algorithms largely decide what our kids like, what they see, and what they see in the future. So really different way that our kids are growing up. Meanwhile, parents haven't changed that much. I love this quote. This is from my friend Michelle Borba, who wrote the opening to my book. And she said, parents want to raise kids who will grow up to be good and kind. And I don't think that's changed. So how do we do that in a world filled with screens? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. And this is a topic I really struggled with when I was writing my book. I really thought about this deeply. And I think that raising a kid today is a lot like building a house. You want to start with a strong foundation of social emotional skills. Those will help your children throughout their life, online and off. Super important. That happens from day one. And then as they get older and they start going online, I think there's 4 areas of knowledge they really need. I call them the pillars of knowledge. They need to understand reputation management, managing their screen time, their relationships online, and finally maintaining privacy. So we're going to tackle all 4 of those pillars tonight, starting with the one that kind of is the most important. Everything kids say and do online stays online forever. That's a long time, right? It can be searched for and viewed by vast and visible audiences. Others can share what they post. So if a kid puts something up and decides to take it down 5 minutes later, could be shared elsewhere and they have no control over that. There is no oops key on the internet. All right, so this is becoming more and more important. Largely, our kids' reputation is like their first impression. And we know now that about 75% of colleges either monitor social media as part of their admissions decision process, or they'll review social media brought to their attention, sometimes by other students. So we kind of know the ramifications of this. These are headlines from just around the web. We see all the time. The most popular story is probably the one, in your neck of the woods. Harvard rescinded applications for 10 kids that were accepted to Harvard. And then they went on Facebook and they formed what they thought was a private Facebook group and exchanged memes that were kind of edgy, inappropriate. The admissions committee got wind of that, and those 10 kids lost their opportunity to attend Harvard, which to me is the most heartbreaking story ever. I never want to have to read that again. But yet, these are the headlines we see. It happened again. Years later, another child lost their opportunity to attend a college. We see people lose scholarships, jobs, internships, etc., all because of a moment of teen, mistake and idiocy. We all make mistakes, but unfortunately for teens today, their mistakes are permanent in public. So if you're a podcast listener, I really encourage you to go to Hidden Brain and listen to this. You can't hit unsend. It's an interview with one of those kids who lost his opportunity to attend Harvard. It is heartbreaking. I've listened to it 3 times and cried every time, but I did learn a lot from it, and it really is a poignant thing to listen to. All right. So I've been teaching, I teach our middle school program 1 day a week. I go into our test school to try out new lessons. So I've been teaching kids about reputation for a long time. And I can tell you some things that do not work. Lecturing kids about their online world, bad idea. They're too excited about the online world. Lecturing goes in one ear and out the other. One-time assemblies don't work. This is a huge, gigantic, complex topic they need to address again and again. And coming at them with a fear-based approach, that doesn't work either, because like I said earlier, it's fun for them to be online. So I'm going to show you one of our little student videos and then talk to you about how we address this topic with kids.
We all have to admit, the internet is pretty cool. It provides a lot of opportunities to learn new things and connect with interesting people. But when you use the internet, it's important to remember that every time you text, tweet, post, comment, play a game, blog, or even fill out a form, the internet has a way of remembering you and what you do. All of your online activities add up to make your digital billboard. A collection of all the stuff you've ever done online. It tells the world all about you. And it's up to you to decide what to put on it. Everything you post can potentially be shared, which is awesome. But remember, it can be seen by anyone and everyone. And Google always knows where to find you. So you're gonna want this billboard to make a good impression, because many people will judge you by what they see online. So think twice about the friends you make, about the things you post, and the selfies you upload. Because you want your digital billboard to be just as awesome as you are.
So when we do that lesson with kids, we have them play a little game where they pretend to be college admissions officers, because I've told them the story about Harvard, right? And so they look at 2 fake applicants and decide which of these 2 to give a scholarship to, an athletic scholarship based on their digital reputation. So I'm going to quickly show you. This is our first applicant. He writes a letter to the kids saying that he's on the soccer team. He's the most valuable player. He has a high GPA. He's on he works for the Boys and Girls Club. He's in a club at school. Sounds awesome, right? So then we have the kids look at his digital reputation. And I'm just going to show you a couple examples. This is actually just part of what we show the kids. But we see here, you know, in his application, he says he wants to, he works with kids to beautify neighborhoods. And then we go on his Instagram account, we see that actually he has toilet paper at a neighbor's house, put it on Instagram. And then we see that there is an article in the local paper that says he allegedly hacked into the school's computer. And we find out that he tweeted something that's kind of inappropriate. 7-1 last night against the Green Mountain Diablos. They played like little girls, #losers. So when I show this to students, they're like, no way, we would never let him in our college. So we look at the girl, same thing, high GPA. She's on the honor roll. She runs in the track team. She plans to major in English. She has a food blog. And then we look at her reputation. Well, this English major has a food blog, but yet the kids immediately see that it's full of misspellings and grammatical errors. They find out that even though she says she wants to be a role model for kids, when she tutors them, she has a very low rating from parents. And finally, she says she's on the honor roll, but yet her name does not appear. So I love this lesson, and I wish I could do the whole thing with you, because what I like about it is kids jump to conclusions about, oh, I would never let her in. But then there's a second part to it. Like, for example, one of the things I have kids use critical thinking skills is to point out that, hey, you don't want to let her in your college because her name's not on the honor roll. But did you think about this? Perhaps that website has not been updated since she made the honor roll. And the kids are like, oh gosh. So it really makes them think how complex a digital reputation is. And oftentimes they say, well, what do I do? And, you know, my advice to them is do your best, be careful of your friends and followers. If something unfortunate pops up in your reputation, balance it with something good, because it's like a whole big picture of who you are. So you can see how our goal is to, you know, lead kids to water, let them figure this out, for us not to lecture them about their digital lives. A great way to do this at home with your own kids is Google people you know in real life and see if what the internet says about them matches the same person you know in real life. So it's a great way to show them that oftentimes people don't even meet us in real life. They think they know who we are based on our digital reputation. And the thing I love to tell parents is don't worry about this, because when it comes to college, what we're finding more and more every year is college admissions officers are going to the internet, not to look for the bad things our kids did, but to find like the gems out there, because there's a lot of kids doing a lot of wonderful things that don't show up in test scores or in a college essay. So that's more and more what's happening with the digital reputation in the college admissions process. And then finally, you know, it's not an option not to have a digital reputation these days. If you are not online, people figure you've got something to hide. So it's something, especially as kids, you know, get in that high school, college age, we have to work with them to have a good reputation, not no reputation at all. So I think that's such an important topic. Almost as important as this one. This is the topic parents worry about most, screen time. We know kids are spending a lot of time on screens, especially after COVID. So here's where we are today. We know that screen time doubled from before the pandemic to nearly 8 hours a day, believe it or not. This does not include time spent on screens for remote learning or schoolwork. That's a lot of time. More screen time was linked to poor mental health and greater stress amongst teens. And Black and Hispanic children had about 30% more screen time than their white counterparts. So that's what we're seeing as far as the data. This is another way to look at it. This is a study that just came out last fall. And you can see here that nearly half of teens say they use the internet almost constantly, which I don't even know how that's possible, but that's what the data shows. All right, so we did learn a couple of things during COVID, and these are really important things to learn. Number one, our kids needed the internet for schoolwork. Where would we have been without the internet during COVID? And they needed it to maintain connections with family and friends. That's how they maintain their social lives. And research shows that social media and video games provided temporary relief from real life and offered important opportunities for social engagement during COVID. So there was definitely some bright sides to using technology. I always tell parents that I think this is a really unique time to reframe our approach to technology and not, or to screen time, not worry about screen time so much, but think about not how much our kids are using it, but ask for what purpose. And that's really important. We do that a lot with our own students. One of the lessons that we do is to have them quantify how they spend their time on screens. Like, were you making something? Were you learning something? Or were you just watching multiple YouTube videos? So I think this idea of consuming versus participating is really important. Talk to your kids, don't just jump on them for like, oh, you were on your screen for this many hours. Ask what they're doing. And I've done that with students, and sometimes I'm really surprised what they tell me. They are making something, or they're watching a YouTube video on how to create something or fix something. So having those conversations, I think right now is really important. The other thing I recommend is having a tech agreement with each child at every age and stage. We offer one on the CyberWise website. This is the first page of it. It's 4 pages long, but basically it's a template with things that you negotiate with your child. All of these things should be agreed upon with your kid. Who owns the machine? What if it gets broken? Who pays for it? Passwords. Do you write your passwords down? Do I have access to them? Do you have to unplug certain times of the day? And then, have them sign it, agree to it, and revisit it so that you have some sort of template. This is really important, especially with our kids below 6th grade. They're concrete thinkers. They need boundaries. And so to give them boundaries when it comes to tech is really important. One thing I didn't mention is I'm going to give you a lot of resources during this talk, and don't feel like you have to write it down. I'll send a PDF tomorrow with links to the things that I mentioned. All right, so I'm a big advocate, obviously, about educating kids about the entirety of digital literacy. All of these lessons that we do, they all have a component on them that calls on kids to think about the time they spend online. And that's really important because they need reasons to curb their screen time, and hopefully learning more about the internet will give them those reasons. All right, so important thing about screen time is for parents to consider their own screen use. Data shows that parents spend about 9 hours per day on screens. That's about the same time that teenagers spend. Yet 78% of parents think they're a good media use role models. So a little food for thought there. And then I like to point out this study. I think it's really interesting. It's called the Goldilocks hypothesis. And what they found in regards to teens is there's a point between low and high use of technology that's just right for teens when their well-being will be its best. You've heard about kids that have no technology are depressed. Kids who have too much are depressed. We got to find that sweet spot in the bell curve for our teenagers. And this study suggests that weekday time should be limited to 1 hour, 40 minutes for video gameplay and 1 hour, 57 minutes for smartphone use. Again, this was extrapolated out over thousands of teenagers. Every kid is different. On the weekends, the limit was 3 hours, 35 minutes for video gameplay and 4 hours, 50 minutes for everything else. So again, this is just very general study, but the point here is when it comes to teenagers, cutting them off completely is not good for their well-being, as having too much is not good for their well-being either. So it's that sweet spot. And when you think your kids are addicted to screens, remember it's not the screen, it's each other. They're addicted to their peers. That's what teenagers do. They detach from their family of origin. They attach to their peers to figure out who they are and what they like. And that work is happening online. So where is it happening? This is also from that 2022 study that just came out about what kids are doing online. And we find that the #1 social media network is YouTube. And I love to tell parents that because they're usually shocked. #1, because they don't think of YouTube as social media. And #2, we're really worried about TikTok and Instagram. Just as an aside, I asked my 6th graders last week, I said, what do you think is the most popular social media network with kids? They all said YouTube. So kids already know this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about YouTube. This is another, I love this little graph. I put it up there. It says 1 in 5 teens visit or use YouTube almost constantly. So I would like to know where those kids go to school and how they are able to do that, because that seems impossible. But just a few tidbits about YouTube. You're supposed to be 13 years of age to open an account. We know kids don't really wait that long. But for those under 13, parents can open a supervised YouTube account that allows them to select a content setting that limits the videos and music they can find and play. I think that's really important for kids under 13. Teens between 13 and 17 are supposed to have a parent or guardian's permission to use the service. So just so you know. Last year, teens turned to YouTube more than Google to learn about things they are interested in. They use YouTube as a search engine. They don't use Google as a search engine. The reason I said used to is because TikTok just surpassed YouTube as the search engine of choice, believe it or not. But I think they're about equal. Kids like video explanations. They don't want to read lots of text. That's problematic for a couple reasons. There's a lot of misinformation on these apps. Also, a lot of the news on YouTube is recommended to the kids by YouTube. YouTube analyzes what it thinks they like and recommends things to them. Also, a lot of kids follow influencers. You probably know this on YouTube. They like to follow people they like and believe everything they say. Again, there's a lot of misinformation on YouTube. Over a quarter of the most viewed YouTube videos on COVID contain misleading information they found. This reached millions of people worldwide. YouTubers, super influential amongst kids. There was an interesting poll that found if kids had a choice between becoming a teacher, a professional athlete, a musician, or an astronaut, or a YouTuber, nearly 30% of kids ranked YouTuber as their top career choice. So here's an example of a kid who's making a pretty good living right now being an influencer. It's kind of a weird one. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Corn Kid. I'm going to play just a few seconds of him.
For me, I really like corn.
What do you like about corn?
Ever since I was told that corn is real, it tasted good.
Did you think corn wasn't real?
But when I tried it with butter, everything changed. I love corn. Corn.
So this kid is now South Dakota's official corn ambassador, and he has contracts with companies like Chipotle. So, you know, there's something to being an influencer, I guess, if you're the right person. All right. So one thing about YouTube is that for every 15 minutes spent watching YouTube, kids had a 24% greater chance of getting fewer than 7 hours of sleep. So YouTube and gaming are both associated with insufficient sleep with kids. So a few things to know about YouTube. So if you're worried about YouTube, what I recommend is talk to your kids about what they're watching. That's super important. You might be surprised. I had a student that told me he watched like 1,000 hours of YouTube, and I thought, what a waste of time. And then I learned that he was actually using YouTube to figure out how to make a computer, which he then did. So that surprised me. Oops, let me go back. If your child has a YouTube account, which only requires a Gmail address, very easy to open one, and you're interested, their YouTube page will display their recently watched videos, their recommended videos based on their watch history, and suggestions for channels similar to those they've watched. So you can find out what YouTube is feeding your kid. If your child does delete their watch history, which some savvy kids do, their recommendations will still be related to things they watch. So not a bad idea to check in. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about TikTok. You guys have probably heard all about this. It's the app used for sharing short user-generated videos. Does not use age verification at all. So there's a lot of super young kids on this app. During COVID, TikTok experienced a 180% growth, believe it or not. And that was with really young users. So 37% are between 10 and 19. So it kind of started out as a dance music video thing. And now there's all sorts of videos on TikTok, fashion tips, skits, news, etc. It often uses popular music. So there's a lot of swearing and foul language on the app, a lot of sexually suggestive material. If you're curious how it works, it's very simple. There's two little feeds. For You feed is the central part of TikTok. It's based on new technologies that they do not divulge, which recommends relevant videos based on weird things like your likes, how long you watch a video, all these things that they analyze to serve you what it thinks you want. And then finally, you can decide who to follow. Kids do this. They follow influencers, and those videos are also fed to them. Challenges are something else very popular on TikTok. Crazy challenges, dangerous challenges, but basically an influencer usually does something crazy on TikTok and challenges other kids to do it, and they take videos of themselves doing it and put it on TikTok. So all kinds of stuff out there. Some super dangerous. A story of a boy named 12 who should not have been on TikTok was left brain dead after using a shoelace to choke himself until he lost consciousness in something called the Blackout Challenge. So be aware of that. And then this is a dance challenge. I'll just give you a flavor of what's on TikTok in case you never watch it yourself.
My might just go psycho. Too many drunk white hoes. Said I won't, but I might though. Walking on a tightrope. I might just go psycho. I might just go psycho. Too many drunk white hoes. Said I won't, but I might though.
So you kind of get a sense of what a dance challenge looks like on TikTok. I'm going to share this quick story. I taught a virtual class about a year and a half ago to 8th graders, and they walked in to Zoom and they said, "You're not going to believe what we saw. We saw a man commit suicide on TikTok." And I'm like, that just can't be possible. And it indeed happened. And so we talked about it during the Zoom, but I saved their chat because it was so heartbreaking. The kids said, "That man that was on the video, it was so sad. 3 sad face emojis. OMG, OMG, OMG. I'm scarred for life. It's really graphic. People on TikTok are disguising the video as puppies and kittens to trick kids into watching. I had to watch Peppa the Pig for an hour afterward to feel better." So pretty heartbreaking. These are young kids seeing content that they're just not ready for. All right, so well, there's some good things on TikTok. I don't want to bag on it completely, but one thing I really like is that it has really good safety features, probably the best of the networks that kids use. So this was all updated last year. Now accounts for users 13 to 15 default to private. And what that means is while others can search for them, they must request and be approved as a friend, which I think is a really great feature. For users 16 and older, account starts out public by default. The other thing they did is now videos created by users under 16 will be restricted by default for download. And there's limits on notifications. This is really good too. Users ages 13 to 15 will not see push notifications after 9, and users 16 to 17 won't see notifications after 10. Super easy to set this up. It's under something called family pairing. And what that means is that a parent or guardian would also have the TikTok app on their phone. They would link their accounts, and that would give them the ability to restrict and keep an eye on all these things you see on the screen. So it's a great functionality and it's super easy to set up. If you go into TikTok under settings and privacy, you select family pairing, and it'll walk you through these screens that you see. Finally, you can scan the code and it will link your 2 accounts together and give you all that functionality. So I think that's pretty great. The other thing, it has something called digital well-being and daily screen time use that allow you to manage the time that you spend on the app. So those are really free, no parental controls needed. This is stuff within the app that you can control what your child does on TikTok. All right, I'm going to talk about Snapchat because this is also a very popular one with kids. If you're not familiar with it, this is when users exchange user-generated photos, texts, and videos. These snaps disappear after they're seen, so kids thought this was a great way to maintain their digital reputation, but kids are also smart, so a lot take screenshots of the snaps and share them elsewhere. So as I tell my students, nothing online is ever private, even on Snapchat. One of the reasons this became so popular so fast, it was the first app to tap into a very primal thing about humans. We love to tell and share stories. And so it was the first app to offer the story feature. Kids will put together a little story of their day, share it with their friends. All of the publishing companies are on Snapchat. They make stories, they put it on there for kids to look at. Some of them are not super appropriate for kids. And as you know, our news over the past few years has not been all that happy. So kids are really learning about current events on apps like Snapchat. The other thing that Snapchat does that's unique, users can share their location. So they have something called Snap Maps where kids can see where their friends are at all times. A lot of parents think that they're reading all their kids' text messages, but actually a lot of texting happens within apps like Snapchat. Those also disappear. Originally, it was kind of known as a sexting app, but that's changed a lot. Kids kind of like Snapchat because they can be silly and unique and authentic on it because things do largely disappear. Snap Streaks. This is a way that Snapchat has decided to keep and hold the kids' attention. They offer kids these little emojis. If they keep sending a snap to the same person every day for consecutive days, they're rewarded with that. That's called a snap streak. So a lot of times kids will be very upset if they miss a snap streak because they feel like the friendship will be ruined. All right, so Snapchat was kind of late to the party to do parental controls, but they finally have something. It is very similar to TikTok's. It's called the Family Center. So it allows a parent to hook their phone up with their kids and do the same thing, where they can view their teen's friends, see who they've messaged, and report abuse. It does not offer as much functionality as the TikTok parental or controls, but it does offer something for parents to see what their kids are doing on Snapchat. And then I'm going to do Instagram pretty quick because you should be familiar with this one. It's owned by Facebook. A lot of adults have it, so it's kind of losing its popularity with kids, but it is a popular way for them to connect with brands, celebrities, influencers, friends, and family. As you know, it's owned by Facebook. So I wrote an article about Instagram about a year ago. You guys probably heard about the Facebook files, and they discovered that a lot of, especially teenage girls, were feeling anxiety and some depression because they could not match up to these beautiful images they saw of other people and perfection that they see on this app. And this is a little bit unique to Instagram because the way Instagram is set up, where your profile becomes all of your previous posts, it's very image focused. And very popular use of the tool called Facetune, which is kind of the kids' version of Photoshop. Most of the images that you see on Instagram that look so perfect are Facetune, so it's not even reality. And it's not just girls feeling pressure from this. Teen and tweenage boys often follow other boys and men they feel have ideal masculine bodies or are more attractive than they are themselves. So a lot of stuff going on Instagram. It was also later to the party as far as opening safety tools, but they do have some on there. This one is also called Family Center. So it's the same thing where it's you have to also have it on your phone and you hook it up with your kids. The thing that's different about Instagram, I think this is crazy, and you'll see it on the left-hand side. Teens can invite a parent or guardian to supervise their Instagram account, provide extra support, and help balance their screen time. So if you wanted to manage your child's time on Instagram, they would have to invite you to do so. This is funny to me. I also talked to my 6th graders about this. I said, how many of you would invite your parents to supervise you on Instagram? And they just thought that was the funniest question ever. You can imagine that there's like 0 children in the world that would want to do that willingly, right? So I think I don't know. I thought that was an interesting feature. All right, so what that allows you to do is parents can see how much time teens spend on the app and set limits. Teens can notify parents when they report something, and parents can see who they follow and who follows them, which you were always able to do, FYI. So that's not that new. All right, so I like to remind parents that games are social media too, especially for boys. This is a great little chart here. You'll see here top favorite apps by gender. So for 6th through 8th grade girls, the number 1 is TikTok. For boys, it's YouTube, and gaming is right behind it. And then here for the 9th through 12th grade girls, TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram. And for boys, YouTube is number 1, Snapchat, and then games. So it's important to remember where girls might connect more via social media apps. For boys, when they're playing games, that's their social media network. That's when they're connecting with their peers. All right, so the last pillar I'll talk about tonight is privacy and personal information. I always feel bad about putting this one last because it is so important. All of these apps we just talked about, all of these places that kids go, they are collecting their personal information everywhere. And the reason this is concerning is because our kids are being targeted at such young ages. These apps think they know our kids better than sometimes we do, and they're targeting them with not only ads, but information that they think the kids want. And I think that's really unfortunate when that happens so young. I love this one. Your phone when you want to buy something. We all know how this happens, right? So there is a law that protects kids under 13. It's called COPPA, the Child Online Privacy Protection Act. It protects the privacy of kids under 13. What that means is sites and apps must get parental consent in order to collect the personal information of a child under 13. That's the reason why all these places require kids to be 13 to open an account. Yet we know that 3/4 of children, 3/4 between 10 and 12 open accounts by simply lying about their ages. They don't think twice. This is just what kids do because they think everyone else is on it. So I don't know, important to know. Okay, the other thing about privacy, and this is something I always tell students, is that, you know, as far as your reputation goes, when you're a kid, there's probably not a lot of data out there yet on you in the internet. But when you open an Instagram account, even if you make your account private, your picture and your bio are public. So if someone were to Google you, that chances are that would be one of the first thing that pops up. And I know a lot of kids, especially the young ones, they'll put a silly picture or an inappropriate bio, and, probably not a great idea because that goes towards their digital reputation. Something else I have students do, this is in our second year of cyber civics, is actually read the privacy policies of the apps they use. And they kind of dive in. Seventh graders are pretty critical thinkers. So they like to go in there and try to find things that adults have done wrong. I'll show you a couple things that students have found. This is a quote from TikTok's page on privacy. We share your data with third-party service providers. These providers include cloud storage providers and other IT service providers. We also share your information with our business partners, advertisers, analytics, and search. So basically they share our information with everybody. But here's the stinger. Even when the app isn't being used, it's collecting information off their phone clipboard. That means if they copy and paste sensitive information such as passwords or private conversations, TikTok is noting and storing that information. So I'll tell you, have a 13 or 14-year-old read that and then ask them what they think. So you'll get a earful. And I don't think we have time for this tonight. It's actually a little interview that was done with my students after they read the privacy policy of Snapchat, and all of the kids decided to delete it from their phones because of what they read. So it was a little interview regarding that. All right, so what can you do as a parent? There's a lot out there, but what are just three takeaways from tonight? So I think number one, respect age limits. I think so many of our internet problems would go away if we just let kids be kids longer. And to remember that nearly every social media site requires kids to be 13. And although the reason is because of COPPA, the real reason in my world is that it takes kids about 13 years of life for them to develop ethical thinking skills. Ethical thinking skills are prerequisite to critical thinking skills. Everything they will do online will require ethical and critical thinking. Do I upload a picture of my friend that's going to hurt their feelings? Do I respond to a predator? All that stuff requires that higher order thinking that kids under 13 just are not ready for. So I think waiting, there's so many good reasons for that. Number two, I love this one. When you think about your digital parenting, be like a dolphin. Be firm, flexible, curious, and playful. So I have a very short video of a mom who's being an excellent dolphin.
Deacon, this is very important. I brought you here because I have questions for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's about TikTok.
Oh, God.
What is TikTok? For all the moms out there, what is TikTok?
Oh, God. Okay, so basically, it's like a short form video platform for like kids, social media.
So people like pick a song they like,
Yeah,
and then they like lip sync the words.
yeah.
Should I be on TikTok?
Sure. You
Should it?
yeah.
Really? Will you help me make a video for TikTok?
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. Rolly, rolly, rolly. Doesn't like that?
Like that.
You break the legs, like break the legs. What's this move?
No.
Oh, I saw one girl doing something about bones for Halloween.
What was she doing? You look pretty cool when you do it.
Okay.
No, I have to correct you.
So I think she was an excellent dolphin, right? Having fun.
Deacon.
And then finally, education. I think nothing is better than educating both ourselves and our children about digital life, especially kids. When students engage in hands-on activities and discussion about digital life together, it empowers them to maintain balance between real life and screen life, to protect themselves and each other, and to create change. So a couple resources for you. So this is our website for our curriculum. We have free lessons on there. If you're interested, just please reach out to me. I'm such an advocate for it because I've seen the change that it makes in kids when they actually learn these things together. This is our website for parents. It's packed with information, especially in our learning hubs. We have a hub on everything from TikTok to Snapchat to cyberbullying. So please feel free to peruse it. In addition to that, we have a pretty jam-packed newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks with just latest research and trends and things. And then finally, there's my book. There's a free discussion guide that goes along with the book. I wrote that because my hope was that communities would read it together, especially if you have kids in the same class or their peers. And then there's questions that go along with every chapter in the book so that you can kind of be on the same page and talk about what your kids are dealing with. And so if you like the discussion guide, that's free on our websites. And then finally, we're super active on social media. If you're that kind of person, feel free to follow us. We're always giving like little short tips to parents out there to help them raise their digital kids. And then finally, I'm super easy to find. If you have any questions that don't get answered tonight, please feel free to reach out to me. So how's that? 40 minutes, I did it.
So awesome. That's so great.
I feel like I talked really fast, but hopefully if anyone has questions of something I did too quickly, I'm happy to do it deeper.
It's so packed with such good info.
It was excellent. Now I have some stuff I can kind of pass on, and for my 5-year-old that I'm trying to get rid of his digital iPad.
Yeah, that's when it starts.
Yeah, thank you. So if anyone has questions who's watching, you can drop those in the chat and we will read those for you. Diana, we have a few questions that we thought families might want to know. If we can go through some questions that we were wondering. I think in the work that I do, I wonder about when parents should be concerned about the amount of time that young people are spending on screens, and sort of when, when I heard your number of, under 4 hours, I think a lot of young people I know just kind of blow that out of the water. So, when should someone be concerned as a parent? What are the key things to look for that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And the things that parents should look for is when it disturbs other important things in their life. If they're not getting proper sleep, if they're missing meal times, they're not getting exercise. Depression is a good sign that they're online too much. So anything that interferes with normal childhood development, you have an issue that needs to be dealt with.
And oh, sorry, Lakeisha, do you mind if I ask a follow-up
question?
Sure. And so then what? What would you recommend in terms of that? We have families that try to shut off internet. We have families that try to approach it from a mental health perspective. What do you recommend for something
it's so
like that?
hard. It's so hard because every child is different. So in a really severe case where it's just interfering with other things in their life, specifically schoolwork, or they're depressed, I mean, there are some great programs around the country for digital detox. That's in the very severe cases. In other cases where it's kind of like it could go either way, I really think like sitting down with that tech agreement is so important, because for a lot of kids, it's like they don't have boundaries. And I know that from, I just did a bunch of lessons on balance with kids. And for a lot of kids, it's like they can be online all night if they want to, and they are. But if there are like, here's our requirements. And the reason that tech agreement is so long is because it's complex. Like, where do the devices go at night? Like, do they stay in your bedroom so that when your parents go to sleep, you can go back online? No, like we all agree that we're going to put them in this place at night. And then we all agree that this many hours, or after homework, just to have those written down agreements and go back every couple of weeks and see if they're too strict, or if you need to make them stricter, or decide what the consequences are if they're not followed. So I think just helping kids have those boundaries is so important. And then on the other end, like this stuff starts early, tech addiction does not happen overnight. It happens gradually. So look at your own screen time. If you're on screens all the time, that's what your young kid is learning. Like that's what it means to be an adult. So that's what I'm going to do. So, and that happens like age 2, they see us on screens 24/7. That's what they're going to do. So.
I didn't see, Sue, do you see any other questions? I didn't see any questions in the box. So a question that I have is, do colleges and employers really, I know you touched on that a little bit, but do they really look at your social media, what you call them, your social media accounts?
Your reputation. Yeah. And I learned this from a friend of mine who runs a company called Social Assurity. And his work is really working with high school kids to kind of like make them have a nice social media account. And he's told me so many stories of colleges he's worked with that tell him that they actually read these things. I'll tell you a personal story that I heard. I have a friend who reads admissions letters for Stanford to decide who to get in. And she told me that she got a blank manila envelope in the mail. And she said there was a letter that said, this is from an applicant. This is the social media account of an applicant, but this is her Finsta. And that's a fake Instagram account. So that's an account that other people don't know about. So if you were to Google her, it would not pop up. But on this hidden account, there were really inappropriate, like she told me it was just crazy inappropriate stuff. This other student, prospective student, had printed those out, put them in a manila envelope and sent it to the admissions people. So when I read you that data earlier that says admissions officers will either look up social media accounts or look at things brought to their attention, that's an example of something brought to someone's attention. So pretty underhanded, but that's a real life story.
Yeah, that was actually one of our questions about the fake social media accounts. And is that safer? And it sounds like the answer is no, because it's still out there.
It's still out there. And I'll tell you, it's like, you talk to kids, they know about the fake accounts. So it's not really that fake if everybody knows about it. So you can't really hide on the internet at all.
We have a couple more questions. I don't see any other questions, but again, for people watching, please ask any questions and we'll jump right over to your questions. My question's about Discord as an app. So it's really popular with students I work with. And it also can be a kind of unmonitored, more problematic place.
Yeah.
So if you could just talk about Discord a little bit.
Yeah. So Discord is very popular with the gamers. That's how they communicate with one another. And it's sort of the language of gaming to be sort of crude and rude and use a lot of foul language. And a lot of times they figure parents aren't there so that they can get away with all that. So especially if you have younger kids playing games, listen to what they're playing or make them do it aloud so you can hear that language. It's pretty harsh for young kids. And then as they get older, sadly, it becomes kind of common to speak like that to one another. So it's a good place for parents to listen in on when they can.
I actually have just a little question too about that. Like, you know, this isn't so helpful for parents, for us as parents to think, you know, what's within our sphere of control as parents and the kinds of conversations and that just the access to information that you've shared that's so important. I'm just curious, like it's so overwhelming, right? And there's like what we can do as parents, but are there roles that you can imagine that you think like schools can take or, you know, policy, larger policy, like what else other than like what we can do as parents? I'm just curious what your opinion is about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the journey I've been on for 12 years, I'm telling you. So I went to school and got my master's in media psychology and social change and started learning about all this stuff. And I'm like, this is such a huge topic. Like parents need to know about this. So we started CyberWise first to educate parents. And quickly we learned parents are so darn busy. It's overwhelming. Like they cannot know all these things. So that's when we kind of started developing cyber civics. And what we've found is the most effective way, hands down, is go to kids themselves. Talk to them about all these issues, have them play these games, create these scenarios, have them come to solutions on their own, and do that for all the topics they're dealing with: misinformation, predators, cyberbullying, digital drama, sexting, you know, on and on. And that's when all of a sudden they decide how to protect themselves in their own world. So, I mean, I feel very blessed now. We have schools in 48 US states that are teaching it. And I just think it makes such a difference when schools can carve out that 1 hour a week for kids to have these discussions. And a lot of the stuff they're learning, it's English language arts skills because they're learning to like read misinformation or read visual media, you know, to what is face to all of that stuff is their literacy, right? So I think in my mind, that's the only thing that works. Nothing else is gonna, parents just, it's too much for parents. Parents, we're busy, man. We got a lot to do. We didn't grow up with this, so it's confusing. It's so confusing.
I have a
Oh, go ahead,
question.
Lakeisha.
I'm sorry, Sue.
No worries.
It's in relations to the younger children, because I do have a 5-year-old, and I'm just, how do we work with like the little ones in terms of, because they don't understand the sense of safety.
Right.
You know, and if I do remove his iPad from him, he's going to have a total meltdown. There's some kids that will, you know, rip their house apart. You know, what are some things that we can do to kind of, you know, work with these little ones, you know, to, you know, shut down time and no, you can't get the iPad without them ripping your house apart, having tantrums.
Yeah. So that's such a good question. And I know so many families struggle with that. And I go back to the American Academy of Pediatrics because they've done so many studies on young kids. And they really say for that younger set to try to have no media at all, like till 2.
Okay.
And then between 3 and 6 to limit it, believe it or not, to an hour a day, which sounds really low, I know. But they say that that's super important for those young kids. And then the other thing they recommend is at those ages, you have to co-view. That's a really good reason also to keep numbers low, because who has time to co-view for 4 hours a day, right? You'd go crazy. So they say for those under 6 to co-view and discuss, because there's so much out there for kids. Even like YouTube Kids is supposedly monitored, and there's stuff that seeps in that they can't control because content comes in too fast. So I feel terrible when I give parents that advice, because it's like, it's almost impossible to be a parent of a young child today,
Yeah.
follow those requirements. But, you know, again, that's not coming from me, that's coming from the AAP, and that's their recommendations.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I wish I had a magic wand.
Thank
Your
you.
magic wand here.
Yeah, one other thing that I'm wondering about is just thinking about during the pandemic, how useful screens were to keep us connected. And then I'm wondering about how, you know, how do we balance, that is the way that teenagers are still communicating, and maybe even more so based on the practice over the last couple of years with the pandemic. So how do we balance that community connection and preventing sort of isolation and depression with being on a screen and connecting with people through media rather than in real life?
Yeah. It's hard right now because kids did form those patterns during COVID. The one bright side that I've seen for a lot of kids is they were so excited to be back in real life that they kind of like veered the other direction. And again, with those kids, you know, even our teenagers need parameters. So if you can get them to do some agreements on screen time, and we're seeing more and more the apps they use have those screen time limits built in. Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, all of them have screen time limits. So to encourage your teenagers to use those in order to limit their screen time is super smart.
I'm just checking our chat.
Yeah,
here.
I don't see any questions.
Other questions? I don't know if anyone else on our team has questions they want to add. Those are our thoughts and questions that we were wondering about coming in.
I just want to thank you so much. I mean, I feel like there's so much information in here about just on the individual level, but also like almost the programmatic level, the kinds of conversations, the kinds of, you know, we work with families, but with families in schools. And so just like thinking about that triangle, right, of how to, and I love how you put the student really in the center of that. And I, you know, when I asked my question earlier, I loved your answer because it feels like the you know, to offer with support that power and that those decisions and that design that students can together, you know, move us in a different direction with our support. And you know,
Yeah.
I can feel really ignorant, and so this has been so helpful. There's a lot of new information for me.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that because, you know, honestly, I feel so much for kids today, especially the ones that are spending too much time online because it's a world that we created for them.
Yeah,
Like-
that's what's so hard. That's what like eats me
Yeah.
up, like when that's what I've been feeling.
It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking. Like I can't blame them. You know what I mean? Like, especially COVID, like all of a sudden, okay, go do all your schoolwork online, meet all your friends online. Oh, COVID's over. Turn it off and go back to real life. Like, they're kids, man. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if they're trying to find their own balance, we cannot create that for a teenager.
Yeah.
That has to be internally created.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, the only hope to do that is to say, hey, you know, TikTok's great, but is it great? Like, look at what they're
Yeah.
doing to you. Like
Yeah.
they're like feeding you stuff that you may not even believe in, you know?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
have them start like questioning and thinking twice and like, gosh, am I online because I want to be online, or am I online because the beeps are keeping me online, or they're tricking me to spend more hours, you know?
Yeah.
All of those things, getting teenagers to think about that,
Yeah.
that's gonna make change. Nothing
I
else.
love that. Yeah.
You're not
And-
gonna be able to tell them to say, hey, turn it off, you know?
And that's the thing, like it becomes like if it's just sort of you and the child, it can feel, you know, like that power struggle, but
Right.
that notion of like putting in in a larger sense of power and justice and like the
Right.
system that's, you know, working on you as a young person, it can put, yeah, there's something that feels different than just
Right.
parent and child back and further. And yeah.
Exactly. Let them discover for themselves how these devices can really take over our lives.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have an 11-year-old, and she, you know, of course, loves YouTube. Just like you said, you really broke it down for me because I learned through her what's important, and to hear the backstory and the research you've done, and the amount of students you've talked to, you're right on point because that's exactly what she's into. Because I assumed she was going to TikTok, and she's not. So YouTube is the one of choice, and she says she likes that better because she likes the influencers and she loves watching those things. So we watch a lot of it together, and she doesn't have a phone, so she can't watch things on her own. She doesn't have a YouTube account. She uses my account, so I can sort of keep track of what she's watching and what she's doing, which has been really helpful. There was a big shift before COVID, we were doing hardly any screen time. Then it, of course, increased. And we sort of figured out that that's okay. And she was able to chat with her friends more and use our phones to, you know, chat with them and have text messages, which we could also monitor. But this has been so helpful tonight, just to sort of hear more of the inside and the backstories of things that I didn't understand or knew
Good.
as my child enters the teen world.
Yeah, and I want to say, like, you're doing exactly the right stuff that every expert would tell you, that co-viewing, co-watching, discussing, that's what it's all about, like doing it together. So you're like a team figuring it out together, and I think that will get her.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that'll send her into her teenage years, knowing that she can come to you if something is weird or inappropriate, you know?
Yeah, that's my hope.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Diane.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I will send you tomorrow a PDF with links if you want to share it with your group to a lot of the resources that I mentioned tonight, so they can.
Oh,
find
that would be fantastic. That's
Absolutely.
fantastic. And folks who are watching, we have, I dropped in the chat on the YouTube Live. This was our fabulous kickoff of our monthly speaker series for caregivers. But every month we'll have a different topic of something like this. So the link is in the chat there, as well as our free weekly support groups that are also available. So anyone else any last thoughts?
Thank you so much. This was fantastic. So helpful.
Oh, you're so
I'm so
welcome.
glad it's going to be on YouTube so people can go back and watch it. I'm going to watch it myself,
Absolutely.
you know, and look at certain points that I need to look at as things come up.
Yes.
Exactly.
Pause. Yeah.
Even we love YouTube, right?
Yes, it's true. It's true. That's why we're using it. Well, thank you so much. This has been
Thank
really,
you.
really a
Thank
major
you.
conversation.
You're very
Fantastic.
welcome. You guys have a
Yeah.
wonderful evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. Okay, I ended the stream.